Hey, good evening, everyone. I'm really happy that anyone's even watching this. I'm very, very new at this, and you know, I probably won't be so good. My quality might be a little off as I'm getting rolling, but I hope to get really good at it. But we'll see what happens. I kind of want to talk um, about our justice system, or justice in general. They say that justice is blind, right? The image of the woman, she's blind, she's holding the scale. And I don't know if I would go with that to say that justice is blind. I think that justice is an ideal in regards to um, how it's prosecuted. We live in a society now where, a person can be arrested like right there. They're caught in the moment, right? The police, they roll up on you, you're in the middle of stabbing someone, bam, they got you. That's one way people get. Then there's the whole indictment system, right? So a crime is committed. We don't know who did it yet. There are suspicions. The police, they do an investigation. There occur evidence, and then what happens is that evidence is communicated directly to a prosecuting attorney, right, who looks at it, and if the attorney thinks they have enough to bring up whoever they think they're going to bring that person up on charges, then they take it to a grand jury. A grand jury looks at it and says, there's a possibility this person might have done something. Then an indictment is granted. An indictment allows a person to be arrested, right? So then they are arrested, and then of course we go into the whole, you're arrested and you're brought in, you're booked, and then there's an arraignment, right? An arraignment is like you go and stand in front of the judge, and the judge says, whether or not you're going to get bail or not. And I'm speeding through this, but what I want to talk about specifically is the whole concept of bail and the whole right to a speedy trial. Now, it's interesting to me that most people don't know their rights. Like, they do not know. Your rights are violated like all the time, and we're not even going to talk about mask or no mask or mandates or anything like that. We're not going to get into that. We're specifically going to talk about in regards to the criminal justice system and your basic rights. So it's interesting to me that we walk around, with these supercomputers in our pockets, and we can look up all kinds of things, at a drop of a hat. But we don't even take the time to look at the things that really matter to us, like your basic rights. People know about their Miranda rights. Oh, you've got to tell me I have a right to remain silent, and I have a right to an attorney if I can't afford one, right? But where does that even come from, right? Or the ability to plead the fifth. Okay, well, if you didn't know this, I'm going to tell you, you get that from those 10 things that are kind of important. Your Bill of Rights. If you've never read your Bill of Rights, or if you haven't even talked about the Bill of Rights before, or at least since high school, shame on you. Because unfortunately, without going into anything, talk about racism or anything along those lines, there's a strong possibility that somebody, either you, or somebody that you know closely, or a person who is close to you, will probably have their rights violated in their lifetime when it comes to, especially when it comes to trouble with the law. Because if you don't know your rights, you don't know that they're even being violated in the first place, right? So how is it that we have all these things and all these gadgets and stuff, but we don't have access to our Bill of Rights? It's very interesting to me. Luckily, I happen to have a handy-dandy copy right here for you. But we're going to talk about that stuff. So when we go into, when we talk about your Bill of Rights, the ones that's really important, all right, besides your, bear arms and speak and your ability to speak in religion, right? We're talking about the part where I get arrested and I'm not in jail for forever. And this is something I'm passionate about. If you've never heard of Khalil Browder, right? where this cat was like, what, 14 or something along those lines, and he got arrested for a backpack in New York. Somebody thought he stole a backpack, and this cat was in Rikers Island for like 3 years, okay? Never got to really stand in front of a judge because the attorney was trying to find evidence on him. He couldn't do it. So what happened is they come to him, they try to get him to plea. If you just plead to this, we'll let you out. Because if you didn't know this, a plea, when you get hooked up, is the same as a guilty verdict. Now, whether or not you plead to something lesser and they let you off, and they just, you gotta be like a scarlet letter and wear something under clothing or something along those lines, you're still guilty, right? You pled. And this happens to people all the time. So with Khalil Browder, he was in jail for 3 years in Rikers, getting his butt kicked, getting beat up, getting assaulted. By the time he finally, got in front of a judge and no evidence could be produced to say that he should even be in jail, he was released. And then he waited, he tried to sue the government. It never worked out. It never did. He ended up killing himself because he had like PTSD, which anybody would have. I can't imagine too many things worse than sitting in jail for something you didn't even do. I mean, it's mind-blowing. It has to be a terrible way. It's a terrible thing. So, when we go into your Bill of Rights, okay, we want to talk about we want to talk about bail, okay? So, the 8th Amendment, right? I had to find it because it's in Roman numerals and it's late. You'll have to forgive me. So, the 8th Amendment states that excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishment inflicted, okay? And then before that, we talk about the 6th Amendment, where it says that all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy a right to a speedy and public trial. I would argue that sitting in jail for months, like in county, which is what happens if you can't, post bail, right? I would imagine that anybody that sits in jail for, 4 months or more, I would think that their 6th Amendment rights are being violated, because how is that a speedy trial? How is that a fair trial? Let me tell you what happens to you when you get hooked up. You sit in jail while they're trying to build a case on you. How is that fair? How is that fair? Right? Because, last I checked, you are presumed innocent until proven guilty. So how can anyone justify putting a person behind bars if you didn't catch them in the act until trial if they're presumed innocent? And then what happens if you get acquitted? You don't get that time back. You don't get that time back. I think that whole thing is total malarkey. There's a Forbes article, right, where it basically states that the whole bail system that we have going on pretty much targets, people with the lower income spectrum. That's all I'll say. People with the lower income spectrum. Because if you've got bread, then you're not going to even be in jail. There was a case in Texas. I want to say that the young man's last name was Couch. He was really weird, okay? He was in middle school, well off, and his parents, for some strange reason, he's in middle school, okay? Middle school. They thought it was a good idea to buy this dude like an F-350, okay? He lived like in his own little compound on his parents' property. I'm not telling you how to raise your kid, but give your kid your own little compound. You got him driving an F-350. He's drinking alcohol. It's probably not a recipe for success. In either case, this guy was drunk driving and then killed some people. He ran them over in his truck, and he kept going. And was eventually arrested. And his defense was affluenza. His lawyer argued that his family was so affluent that he didn't know the difference between right and wrong. And he had a bench trial. He didn't go to a trial by jury. That's another thing we should talk about, right? He had a bench trial, which means that a judge was sitting on there. So the judge is one person. And the judge let him off. Now, granted, the judge, resigned and retired, soon after that case was over, and you can make your own, assumptions from that information. This is a real thing. I'm not making this up for you. But the judge let him off. Affluenza. So, if we have people who are so wealthy that their parents just cover for them as soon as they get hooked up, but we have working people that just end up in trouble, and bail is set at something ridiculous, $100,000, right? If you get a $100,000 bail, 10% of that is definitely 10 stacks, and that's a little hard for people, the average person, to come up with, right? They got to put something on, they got to go see the bail bondsman, put their house up. I would argue that that violates your 8th Amendment right for excessive bail. It's just an idea. But if you don't know that you have these rights, how can you argue that, right? How can you argue that? And that's my whole point talking about this. And no, I'm not fired up because anybody I know has gotten hooked up. It's just the idea that this whole two-tier system, and it is a two-tier system, right? The whole idea of the government or the law system doesn't, if your skin colors are different, then you're going to be treated differently under the law. Like, no, bro, no. It's the haves and have-nots. The haves and have-nots. If you've got bread, money talks. You're probably going to be treated differently. If you don't have bread, I hope people can put some money on your commissary, because you're going to be there for a while. And that's something that we should do something about. We should really talk about that. Because if we're all innocent until proven guilty, I'm going to need you to come better than that before you come knocking on my neighbor's door and take away months or years of their life for an assumption, just for them to get off and have their life destroyed. It just doesn't seem right to me. It just doesn't seem right. So if you take anything from this, know your rights. Know your rights. It's very easy to find. Bill of Rights, Constitution, $10 Amazon. But it's just your life, right? What's $20 versus having the education to, be free? Just an idea. I appreciate anybody for listening to this, and hopefully I can get better as we go along. Y'all have a nice night.